Hey there, good evening, and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph, and I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. Okay, today is the series of my series on rock greats who have thrilled us but since have passed on. And this is episode 15. From 1978, we are doing two people today. Two fairly lengthy people. This could be my longest video. So the two people we're doing are Bill Kenny Jr. from the Ink Spots and Keith Moon, legendary drummer from The Who. So the one that will go first will be Bill Kenny, since he passed away first. Okay, Bill Kenny. I made quite a few notes about him. I also listened to some of his stuff because I wasn't as familiar. I knew the name and I knew what he was known for, but I really didn't know a lot about him or his music or what he sounded like. He had a very high voice, almost a soprano tenor high. It almost sounds falsetto, but I don't think it is. I really don't. It's like John Anderson. People often think that John Anderson's voice is falsetto, but it's actually his natural voice, and that's the same here, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I believe. Okay, so about Bill Kenny, Bill Kenny Jr. He was born June the 12th, 1914 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Died March the 23rd, 1978 at the age of 63 in New Westminster, Canada. I think New Westminster is on the west coast in British Columbia. That's my recollection of where it is. Music, he was into pop, R&B, doo-wop, which was a kind of music. I don't really know how to describe it. You gotta kind of hear it, I guess. and rock and roll, of course. Easy listening music, jazz, gospel. So he got into quite a bit of stuff. He was a tenor vocal as an adult, so he did drop from a soprano to a tenor, but he had a very high voice. I heard him singing a couple tunes with Ella Fitzgerald, and he was maybe slightly higher than her. It's pretty good. He was active from 1932 to 1978, so a fairly lengthy career. One of the few artists I've done so far that actually has lived long enough to have a very lengthy career. Anyways, about him. Okay, first thing you should note that he was a twin. He had a twin brother, Herb, who also eventually became a member of the Ink Spots. He sang soprano during his school years, singing in many events at the school. At one point, he had won 21 of 22 amateur contests. That's pretty impressive. He won a contest singing this song called Trees, and he won first prize, which was to sing with the Ink Spots. That's how he got introduced to the Ink Spots and became a member. He was also considered a major influence to a lot of fairly well-known stars, which included people like Elvis Presley, Sam Cooke. Trying to think of a few other ones. Those were the two main ones that I remember. And there was lots of them. There's like about 50 people that cited him as a major influence to their music. Elvis Presley went as far as to say, I'm not going to quote it, but I remember reading a quote about him saying that, I'll never be as good as Bill Kenny, but I'm just aspiring, or something to that effect. He did his first solo with the Ink Spots in February of 1978, and then he also performed on the Ed Sullivan's very first show. He was one of the first blacks to appear, or first African Americans to appear on TV with the Ink Spots. One of the things that happened to him was that he was smoking in his car, and there was some fumes, and the car exploded, and he was burnt fairly badly in the face area. And he also inhaled a lot of fumes, which gave him a respiratory problems, and this eventually was his undoing. It took his life at 63 from complications brought on by this respiratory ailment. Anyways, he sang with many people. Ella Fitzgerald. He sang with Ray Charles. He had many songs that he recorded with as a solo artist and with the Ink Spots. Many people cite him as like one of the best singers of all time. I think he was a pretty good person though overall. He was married 3 times. The second wife basically told him that she was having his child, and it turned out that she adopted somebody to in order to get financial support from him, and he filed for divorce, and he actually sued her, and I'm not sure the result of that. A couple people actually sued him too. One for his third wife. The man sued him because he feels that he lured her with money and gifts away from him. Eventually, they settled at a court for an amount of about $1,300. Anyways, that's his personal life. But musically, he was well known. He eventually became the kind of the leader of the Ink Spots. And then it was Bill Kenny and the Ink Spots for about 18 years. And then eventually he left the Ink Spots to go solo. But even when he was solo, some of the stuff that he released, solo songs that he released, were also released as Ink Spots stuff too. So a very fairly well-renowned vocalist. I mean, maybe not a common name to the average person listening to rock music, but he had an influence on a lot of rock musicians and people that cited him as being a major influence in their careers. So there you have it. That was Bill Kenny Jr. of the Ink Spots. Okay, so the next person I know quite a bit about. I didn't even actually make any notes, but there's so much stuff that you could say about him. We could take up another hour with this guy, but I'm going to try and just talk about the type of character he was and his contribution to maybe one of the best all-time rock bands in history, The Who. Of course, we're talking about Keith Moon. I've already mentioned that. I'll give you the vitals on him first. He was born August the 23rd, 1946 in Wembley, England, and he died September the 7th, 1978 at the age of 32 in London, England. Musically, he was involved in hard rock and what they would call power pop. That's probably quoted based on The Who. Their stuff in the later part of their career, and some of the stuff in the early part was a little bit less than hard, but still pretty powerful stuff. And of course, rock and roll. His instrument was drums, and he did do some vocals as well. He actually had a solo album called Two Sides of the Moon, which did not actually do very well. He was active from 1962 until his death in 1978 from a drug called hemineverin. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Hemineverin, which was used to control, to help him with his drug and to help him with his alcohol issue. He was basically an alcoholic. I don't know if he actually admitted that, so maybe he was just a drunk. I'm not really sure. Anyways, what can I say about Keith Moon that many people haven't already said about Keith Moon? I'll go over some of the more outrageous stuff that he did. Well, first, I want to talk about his drumming, which is, to me, the reason why he's famous. He had a very unorthodox drum style. He even actually went as far to say, they asked him how he got in The Who, and he went as far as to say he showed up and played the second half of a concert set for them when the other drummer left, and kind of broke up a couple pieces of his drum kit. Not really a surprise. And then after the set, he was asked what he was doing on the week next Monday, and he said he was working. And they said, well, we'd like you to come and play, so you're going to have to give up your job to play. But he said he was never actually invited to join the band. And when asked, by Ringo Starr was the one that asked him this. When you were asked by Ringo Starr when he joined the Who, he says, I'm actually just been subbing for the past 15 years. That typical Keith Mooney, always a laugh about everything. Everything was fun and games, and just he loved being in the limelight. He loved all of the attention. He was a really attention-seeking person, to say the least. And he would get bored if there wasn't something going on, and that wasn't always a good thing. He destroyed many hotel rooms, had a perplexity for blowing up toilets, like to put baking soda and other elements in condoms, flush them down the toilet so that they went to the toilet below and come out and explode and break up the toilet downstairs. Yeah, a different type of guy. Once drove his car, or whatever it was he was driving, limousine, through the front of a Holiday Inn hotel, right into the pool. That has a tendency to get their attention, you know. So anyways, I think the Who are the only band in history to be banned from the Holiday Inn. And Pete Townsend once told a story about him and Keith Moon jumping from the 3rd floor into the pool. Crazy, One time he actually was sitting on the edge of the window talking to people, and they said, I've had enough, and just sat back and fell out the window, and he freaked people out, and they ran to the window, and he was lying on a mattress in a dumpster 3 floors below. Anything to get attention, right? So anyways, about his drum ability, he was very unorthodox. One of the first drummers to use both feet for double bass rolls and stuff like that. He used to put fills in songs where nobody else ever thought to do that. He would just put these fills in there. He liked to use, I've watched a lot of videos of his, and I noticed he liked to take his right hand and go back and forth across like this, hitting the cymbals, like the 2 cymbals on either side. He liked to do that. That was something he did quite a bit, actually. And he just had this kind of weird style, and his drum kit kept getting bigger and bigger. Early on in the career of the Who, he was smashing the drums every night, So they would make so much money a night for their concerts, and smash up, between him and Pete Townsend, they'd smash up more equipment than they made. So they weren't getting anywhere financially that way. We're actually broke in 1969, and we're on the verge of breaking up because they were losing money. And if not for the album Tommy, they might not have lasted. And Tommy put them on the map, album-wise. It was, they'd had a few albums before that, but this was really their first album, 1969's Tommy. Coincidentally, it's not really one of my favorite of their albums, but can't doubt the impact of it. It's cited by many groups as being one of the first concept type albums released, Anyways, this was his musical style, and he was actually, I think, quite an extraordinary drummer. He wasn't really keeping the beat, and sometimes Entwistle and Townsend complained that he would be too fast or too slow. But what he tried to do is he tried to play the part tying somewhere between the guitar style of Pete Townsend and the drum and the bass playing of John Entwistle. He tried to play that area in the middle. And he's actually, for the most part, fairly successful at this until towards the end of his career, where he was noticeably out of shape and not really up to the snuff anymore. And that was from years of probably not playing and years of drug addiction and not taking care of himself and all that. Some of the other things he did is he would drink and crazy, or he would, the one story about him passing out on stage. Well, there was the story about him having a cold or something, and they told him, well, if you take half of one of these horse pills, shots for horses, it'll probably give you enough adrenaline to play the concert. He says, well, I'm Keith Moon, I'll take the whole thing. And he took the whole thing, and then for about 30 seconds when he was on stage, he played like a madman at high speed, and they're all looking at him, and then he just keeled over and passed out. And they weren't even sure. They thought maybe he was dead. And that was the concert where they got somebody in the crowd to come up and finish the set. It's a wacky band. Anyways, always something with this guy. Always. Like, just crazy shit, But the one thing about him, I think he was very well liked. His bandmates liked him. Lots of people liked him. He was just a very funny guy who was very endearing, and people just liked him. But he was crazy. Joe Walsh once cited that, he discovered one time something that scared him more than any other thing in his life, and that was that Keith Moon liked him. Imagine, eh? Anyways, this topic about Keith Moon is one of the people I chose to do in this series, but he's not really like any of the other ones. Like the other ones, it was about their music and what they achieved and how their life came to an end and that stuff. But this guy, I really focused a lot more on his personality, because to me that's what made Keith Moon special. And to me, it's really unfortunate that such a character as his had to go at 32. But a lot of these guys like this, they go like that. Like Jim Morrison was another type of guy like that, bit eccentric, wild in many ways. Jimi Hendrix, and there's going to be a few more coming up, and some of them very quickly, who are like that. They just not born to last very long. Better, like they said, to burn out than fade away. So who saw him too, right? He was to me a legend and one of my favorite drummers, and I think his death pretty much ended the Who in the Who's eyes. I mean, Pete Townshend's gone on record of saying the Who hasn't existed for a very long time. There's just people playing their music, And it's true, like, they've released albums since his death, a couple of them in the 80s, and then two more of them since the turn of the century. And the two since the turn of the century are very good albums, but I don't think you'll ever see the kind of wild, reckless abandon that you saw with the Who when Keith Moon was there. Arguably one of the very best live shows to see. They were just this competition that just went on pretty much from the beginning to the end of the show, with Pete and Keith neck and neck trying to steal the show, and Roger doing his best to try to keep up, and then John Entwistle just saying, forget it, I'm just going to stand here. Anyways, Keith Moon, that's it. A great guy. There's a lot of other things I could tell about him, but that's why we have comments, so people can add your stories too. I don't want to dominate the whole scene. If you've got something to say about Keith Moon, or something to say about his legacy, or things that maybe you think I was incorrect about, that's fine too. Put them down. And if you like this video, then like below and subscribe. Episode 15 is now at an end. Episode 16 will be coming up on Wednesday morning. This one will be released tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning. And 1979 is upon us. Almost the end of the 70s, moving into the 80s very soon. This was one of the more enjoyable episodes that I had to do, because I was familiar with at least Keith Moon and a little bit with Bill Kenny Jr. Two people that very influential, no doubt about that. Anyways, from Prog Monster, have a good night, and you'll see this video in the morning. Take care. Bye.